Week 5, almost in the books. So some observations and potential regrets. Okay, let's start with your Super Bowl participants from last year. They are 2-3 Cincinnati, who would be a 13 seed today in the AFC. That's not going to cut it. And the Rams, who are 2-3, they would be an 8th seed. Let's look at some offensive stats. The Cincinnati Bengals are second to last in yards per play on offense. Burrow's been sacked 18 times, and an O-line that was completely revamped. Yeah, I guess you could argue it's improved a little bit from the very beginning of the season, but it hasn't felt like that. Where on the other side, you have the Rams, who are right behind Cincinnati in yards per play. They're last in the NFL. Stafford's been sacked the second most time, I believe, of any quarterback, 21 times, and he's tied for the most interceptions. So Stafford's fallen apart. They can't protect him. Burrow's not as bad as Stafford is, but the O-line is still an issue. And if you look at last night's game, like, that was important for both teams. That was a really important game for both teams. So if you're Cincinnati, you're like, okay, we got one at Baltimore. They're good. Maybe they're not great because they're still not sure what to make of Baltimore, more so because of the defense and how bad it's looked at times this season. Although I thought they looked pretty good last night, but I'm also guilty of thinking that everybody on the Ravens is awesome on defense when they wear the all-black uniforms. So I'm like, man, look at all these dudes out there. And it could be because of the uniforms. But Cincinnati drives down, Burrow in for the touchdown, 17-16. You're thinking, man, this is going to be quite a win because Baltimore's defense had done a really good job against Cincinnati most of the night, limiting Chase, which seems to be the number one thing everybody's trying to do, more so because maybe there's more Chase awareness. You know, you just start looking at how he's covered, and it's kind of like a zone to Chase all in itself, even though when Cincinnati's healthy, you like the rest of their guys. But look, the Rams can't run the football. So we're kind of looking at both teams going, well, who's in a worse spot of the two teams that played in Super Bowl? And you're like, well, I would say there's still more things I probably like about Cincinnati. I still can't believe the Rams are going to be this bad. We're going to have Sando on, like we mentioned. And if you look at McVay, who's just under 100 games as a head coach, like five of the worst 8 or 9 in the entire time that he's been with the Rams have been this season. So maybe the tiebreaker in this one for who's in a worse spot would be the Rams win it just because they're in the NFC and not the AFC. But that was a big loss last night for Cincinnati. And I think at the other side of it, it was a big win for Baltimore, where Lamar has been so good this season, wasn't super clean last night, missed a couple throws. The pick was bad. The missed touchdown was bad. I think they did something where I had to figure out how the stats work, but they said it was like a 65% completion percentage on their next-gen stats of the touchdown they missed the right side. I don't know. That seemed like way too low to me. But then he has the huge run, sets up Tucker for the field goal. So I almost feel like in a weird way, because Lamar had been uncharacteristically bad based on who we've seen this season, that him being bad and then finding a way to win with his legs at the end of the field goal, like that was something that they needed because Baltimore hasn't been winning many close games either. So it really kind of comes back to these lessons where the week 1 lesson for Buffalo against Los Angeles was Buffalo's going to get pressure with their front four. This is incredible. Allen's awesome. Okay, no problem. They smashed the Rams. But you know what? The Rams just weren't that good. It's not that big of a deal. It's just one game, and all of us love Buffalo. Well, no, the lesson in that is that the Rams can't seem to figure out this O-line, and it's making Stafford worse. And if you look at it, at this point, the Rams are giving their quarterback the least amount of time to throw, although Cincinnati's in a weird spot with that too. The positive for Cincinnati, you could say 3 losses by 3 points, 3 points, and 2 points. But the wins are versus Joe Flacco and then Tua being replaced by Teddy Bridgewater. So major concerns for both of those teams. All right, we keep it moving here. The Nfc East, I won point this season, said if it was a product, I would return it. You know what I would do? I'd probably order it again now. I'm taking them off the ban list. It was very short-lived. It's not super professional, I would also add. But I was just so sick of all those Sunday night games where I'd be like, these games are awful. And we had a bad one this year early on with Dallas and the Giants. But Philly beats Arizona. Philly right now is 8th on offense in yards per play, number 3 on defense in yards per play allowed. Their defense is just really good, and Hurts is at another level. So you have to be watching Philadelphia all the time. That win against Arizona, another weird Arizona game where they can't score any points in the first half. I'm going to say something that I may regret about Kyler Murray, but we'll see. He slides short of the sticks, which, you know, I get it. He's a quarterback. He's trying to go down. So it's 3rd and 1, but at 22 seconds left, he gets up and the clock was running and he spikes it instead of trying to figure out a way to maybe just run a play there. I don't like spiking it as much as people do spike it. I just don't like it. I think it's a waste of a play. And in that case, I thought it was terrible. So now it's 4th down, and you have to bring out your field goal kicker who was picked up off waivers. He misses the 43-yarder, and Philly stays undefeated, and Arizona continues to just look like one of the most frustrating squads in the entire league. All right, so if you're looking at the NFC East, that's the Philly story with a little Arizona sprinkled in there. New York is 19th in yards per play offensively. You're like, well, that's not that great. Yeah, well, the problem is last year they were 31st. So Dable's made this team just more, I'm trying to think of the right word. I don't know if the Giants are good. I don't know if Daniel Jones is good, but the fact we're even asking the question now this many years in for Jones is an improvement off of where I'm like, this guy isn't any good. He has only 3 passing touchdowns in 5 games. That's usually not a great sign. He has run 2 in. But he's been just a little bit better with the football. The wins in the beginning, you're like, all right, Tennessee, Carolina, who fired their coach today, Matt Rule, Chicago, who's awful. But then you beat Green Bay. And I guess you could put other qualifiers on over London. It just feels like, you know what I should have said? The word is competent. They're just more competent than they've been in a long time. And whether that's Dable and improved Jones, that's great. That's great because I don't know that Jones is the answer. And sometimes we can just look at wins and think the quarterback's doing all of it when it's really just not true at all. I don't know that you would survive at this touchdown to game rate that we have with Jones at this point, but just a little bit more competent and a win against the Green Bay team that I think is still one of the top tier teams in the NFC, which again, I could be wrong about that. Like that's the kind of winner I'm like, okay, this isn't just the schedule because we are at that point of the season with the NFL where there's plenty of teams where you're like, okay, but who do they beat? Is it the Jets have only beaten backups? And then, they have their guy back in Zach Wilson. But I mean, Miami was on its 3rd string quarterback there. So you can find little records. We'll 5 weeks from now, we'll be at week 10 going, oh, what happened to that team? Oh, they got a lot better. Oh, no, they got a lot worse. You're like, yeah, but it could have been a completely misleading start just based on the opposition. And now let's talk and stay in the NFC East with Dallas. It's a perfect Dallas season and storyline playing out because even when it's good, they can't help but have something that leads to a bigger topic, and that is this Cooper Rush, Dak Prescott thing. Phil Simmons fired off a scorcher when Cooper was stepping in for Dak, saying he's just as good, if not better. Suri, see if we can find that one again, because I think it was like he was saying it was close, but basically hinting that he thought Cooper was better. So Dallas is now 4-1, wins against Cincinnati, the Giants, Washington. By the way, speaking of Washington, Wentz with the what's this button for play, again, to close out one for the Commanders. And now the Rams. They haven't allowed 20 points in a game this season. Their defense is 5th in opponents' yards per game, and they are the number 3 scoring defense behind, I think, San Francisco and Buffalo. This defense is awesome. That's what it is. Cooper Rush has been nice, okay? He's kept his side of the game clean. He's only had to complete 25 passes the last 2 weeks combined, right? That doesn't happen a lot. You're averaging 12.5 completions a week. You're probably not winning many games unless you're going to run the ball. And they actually run it better, I think, with Pollard and Zeke at this point. Pollard's been terrific for them. But it's an awesome defense. It's good balance. But it's going to be weird if Dak, when he comes back, it's not if, but when he comes back with this thumb injury that's affecting his grip, what if they lose a couple games? Is it going to turn into a classic Cowboys thing where it's actually not even accurate, right? This is not Cooper carrying this team every single week. Dak is the better quarterback, but even in a stretch of success for them over 5 weeks, you can't help but have it be a little Dallas-y or there'll be some kind of drama. Couple last things. Things I think I might be wrong about, but I'm still not sure I'm wrong. So basically, just classic me. I'm thinking this. I don't really want to give in. Like, you think when Tua threw 6 touchdowns, you think this guy gave in? I think this guy went, come on. No, I was like, all right, we'll see. We'll see how this plays out. I can't believe Geno Smith has been this good. I mean, he is on fire for Seattle. They lost a close one yesterday. He is the number 1 QB rating, which at times can be a little misleading. He's number 4 in QBR. His completion percentage is number 1 in the NFL. This dude is he's completing 75% of his passes, but he's averaging 8.3 yards per attempt. So sometimes you'll see a spike in a completion number for a quarterback, and you're like, okay, but how far is he actually throwing it on these attempts, right? And he is 3rd behind Tua and Jalen Hurts. and the yards per their attempt. So on top of that, what else? The 9-2 split, touchdowns, interceptions. And he's taking care of the football too. If you look at, where he's been over his career, again, he hadn't played much lately at all. Not that he was going to surpass Russell Wilson, although Denver Russell Wilson, I hope it's a shoulder problem. That would explain a lot, because I still can't believe it's been this bad, which you touched on Friday. But yeah, you look back and there's no comparison. Like, this is the best he's ever been. And Seattle, a team that I thought was going to be one of the single worst teams in the league, looks like kind of that Atlanta thing where you're like, hey, who's in a lot of games? Atlanta, which doesn't make a ton of sense. I think Seattle kind of fits that mold as well. The last one here, are the Pats good? I thought going into the last couple of weeks, I'm like, this team is so boring. The running backs are good. Interior linemen are good. I don't know about the tackles. I think I'm flirting with a Bailey Zappi's better than Mac Jones thing, but that might be just because I couldn't believe how many people were just convinced that Mac Jones was the guy. And since that didn't happen with Zappi, that I'm just playing out some weird fucked up role of like, hey, are you saying Zappi's better because you think it, or because you want it to be true because people were so high on Mac Jones when you were a little bit more reserved about it? I wouldn't say I was anti. I just was like, I don't know that everything's good here for the next 10 years. Because I still think there's some limitations with him. All of that's just talking out loud stuff, which may not mean anything. But to beat Detroit, who to this point had been a really good offense, and hold them down the way they did, and the way they're running the football, this kind of like old school football zag in comparison to everybody else, like, it's been pretty impressive. I thought that was an impressive win, although Goff historically in his 3 games against Belichick, not great, Bob.